Betrayal hurt the most when it came from your own children. I had spent years thinking I was doing everything right, being the mother who showed up, who sacrificed, who put herself second so her family could be first. I never imagined I would become the person my children would eventually try to erase from their lives. My name is Daisy Gainan, and I used to believe love was enough. But love meant very little when your own son looked past you like you were furniture, and your daughter lied just to avoid having lunch with you. I wasn't always a cleaning lady. Once, I was Mrs. Henry Gainan, wife to a successful financial advisor with a sleek office in Century City. We met when I was 19, waiting tables at a busy restaurant, and he was already climbing the corporate ladder. To me, he was charm, escape, and security wrapped into one. We got married fast. I gave up school, my dreams, and built a life around Henry and later our 2 children, Isaac and Matilda. For nearly 2 decades, I was the model wife. I cooked for dinner parties, volunteered at the kids' schools, and made our home look like something out of a magazine. I didn't mind giving up my identity. I thought I had everything I needed. That illusion shattered when Henry left me for his 28-year-old secretary. 15 years ago he walked out the door and took everything with him. Our home, our savings, our life. His lawyer was sharper, richer, and more prepared than mine. The court gave me barely enough to get by. Child support didn't cover even basic groceries, and alimony was a joke. At 43 with no degree, no work history, and 2 teenagers staring at me like I was the reason their life fell apart, I had to start over. I cleaned because it was the only job that paid enough and didn't require a resume. First I worked for an agency. Then I built a private client list. For 15 years I scrubbed million-dollar homes, often for women who once invited me to their charity luncheons back when I was married to Henry. They didn't recognize me now. Or maybe they did and simply chose not to. Either way, I wasn't invited to sit at the table anymore. I wiped their counters instead. Isaac and Matilda grew up into people I barely recognized. Isaac went to UCLA, thanks to a scholarship and Henry's parents. He moved to San Francisco, started working at a tech firm, and made more money than he could ever spend. Matilda studied marketing, married well, and built a life filled with brand launches, cocktail parties, and fashion shows. They called only when they needed something. Birthdays were ignored. Cards went unmentioned. Sometimes I wondered if they even remembered where I lived. That's why the text from Isaac surprised me. Mom, I'm hosting a dinner for my birthday next weekend. Can you come? Saturday at 7. No call. Just a message. I stared at it for a long time. He hadn't invited me to anything in years. Usually, he celebrated in Cabo or Aspen with Amber, his glamorous wife. I always sent a card, sometimes with a small gift tucked in. He never replied. But this time he wanted me there. My fingers shook as I typed back. I'd love to. What should I bring? He replied. Just yourself. 124 Mulholland Drive. I read that address 3 times. Mulholland Drive. The Hollywood Hills. Course. The whole week I prepared. I bought a small vintage frame and put in a photo of Isaac as a boy on the beach. His favorite place when he was small. Picked my best dress. It wasn't new, but it was clean and simple. I got my hair done at the mall, nothing fancy, just enough to feel presentable. On Saturday I took the bus as close as it would go, then called a ride for the rest. The driver looked at me like I was lost. Big party, he asked. My son's birthday, I said, holding my voice steady. The house was breathtaking. Glass, concrete, luxury cars in the drive. A security gate with an intercom. I almost turned back. But then the door opened and there was Isaac. Tall, polished and distant. Mom, he said. You made it. I stepped in for a hug, but he didn't move. Just gestured for me to come in. Everyone's out by the pool, he said. I didn't even get a proper welcome. And when I stepped into that house I knew. I didn't belong there. I followed him through the sleek, silent house, my heels tapping on polished concrete floors. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. All angles and leather, no warmth. The walls stretched upward 20 feet high, covered in abstract art that probably cost more than my yearly income. When we reached the terrace, I paused. Below us, the city shimmered, the view so perfect it almost felt unreal. About 20 guests stood in little clusters, holding champagne flutes and laughing softly like they were in a commercial. I spotted Henry immediately. He hadn't changed much. His hair had gone silver, but it made him look more distinguished. Natalie stood beside him, glowing in a red designer dress that probably cost more than a month of my rent. Amber spotted me and waved, smiling with her lips but not her eyes. "Daisy, what a surprise," she said. I kissed her on the cheek and handed Isaac his gift. He didn't open it. He didn't even look at it. "Thanks, Mom," he muttered, already distracted, glancing over my shoulder. "Let me get you a drink," he added, disappearing before I could say another word. I stood alone, holding a wine glass I hadn't asked for, pretending not to notice how no one approached me. I scanned the crowd for Matilda. She wasn't there. We hadn't seen each other in nearly 6 months. She'd cancelled our last 3 lunch plans with last-minute excuses. Meetings, family dinners, a sore throat. I started to wonder if she'd ever intended to show up at all. Henry came up beside me too close. "Daisy," he said in the same smooth voice that used to make me melt. "You look well." "So do you," I replied politely. Natalie joined us, looping her arm around his waist. "Still with the cleaning company?" she asked, her smile sharp. Before I could answer, Isaac returned and handed me a glass of white wine. "Is Matilda coming?" "Yes." His face tightened. "She and Jacob are in Paris this week. Fashion week. Company stuff." I nodded slowly. Matilda hadn't mentioned Paris when she cancelled our lunch. The lie sat like a stone in my stomach. "That's wonderful for her," I said softly. An awkward silence followed. I tried to compliment the house. "It's beautiful, Isaac. You must be proud." Before he could answer, Henry jumped in. "It's a smart investment. I've been telling him for years to buy up here." Natalie added, "We've been thinking of getting a place up here ourselves. For weekends. You know, a second spot." As if the Malibu beach house wasn't enough. I took a sip of wine to mask the rising shame. I shouldn't have come. I didn't belong here. I wasn't a guest. I was a shadow, a ghost from a past no one wanted to acknowledge. Isaac drifted off to join a conversation across the terrace. Henry and Natalie soon followed. No one looked back. No one even noticed I was still standing there. I wandered toward the edge of the terrace and looked out at the sparkling city below. The lights reminded me of the houses I'd cleaned, homes that had seemed full of life from the outside, but were often cold and hollow within. I thought about my hands, the ones that had scrubbed toilets and mopped floors for the past 15 years. The same hands that had held Isaac the day he was born. That had bandaged Matilda's skinned knees. That had cooked, sewn, cleaned, comforted. Silently, constantly, without complaint. And yet, those were the hands they were ashamed of. As the sky darkened, I stood by myself, invisible again. Just like I had been for most of the last decade. Eventually I stepped back inside, looking for a bathroom where I could breathe for a moment. I found myself in Isaac's office. Sleek, cold, and expensive. There were no personal touches, just leather, glass, and modern art. But then I noticed a framed photo on the desk. Picked it up. It was a family picture. Isaac, Matilda, Henry, and Natalie, smiling in front of a Christmas tree. I wasn't in it. Not even a mention. As if I had never existed. The voices of Isaac's friends floated down the hallway. I stepped into the corridor just in time to nearly bump into them. "Oh, is this your mom?" one of them asked. "The one you told us about." Isaac appeared behind them, stiffening. "Yeah, this is my mother. Daisy." I smiled and extended my hand. "Nice to meet you." The young man shook it awkwardly. "Isaac told us all about your cleaning business. Very entrepreneurial." Another chimed in. "Yeah, cleaning for the rich and famous, right?" Before I could speak, Isaac cut me off. She doesn't clean for celebrities or anything. Just regular homes. Actually, I said, my voice clear, many of my clients are quite well known. I've worked in more Hollywood homes than most studio executives. It wasn't exactly true, but it wasn't a lie either. Isaac shot me a look, the kind that warned me to stop talking. Mom, he said under his breath, don't exaggerate. I'm not, I replied calmly, keeping my dignity intact. I've built a business that supports me comfortably. That part wasn't fully true, but I wasn't going to let him shame me in front of his friends. His friends shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension between us. One tried to change the subject with a nervous laugh. Well, that's cool. My mom's an accountant. Boring as hell. There's nothing boring about honest work, I said firmly. Isaac's expression darkened. Mom cleans because she never finished college, he said. His voice just loud enough for them to hear. She didn't have many options. The words hit like a slap. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. I clean, I said, voice still, because when your father left us with nothing, I had to keep you and your sister in the same school, in the same neighborhood. I clean because it allowed me to be there when you needed me. I clean because it's honest work, and I do it exceptionally well. His friends were visibly uncomfortable now, their eyes down, pretending to sip from empty glasses. Isaac looked around, clearly embarrassed, then hissed, "Can we not do this now? It's my birthday." "Yes, it is," I said. "And from the moment I arrived, I've been made to feel like I'm not supposed to be here." "That's not true," he said quickly, but his eyes were already scanning the terrace to see who was watching. "When was the last time you invited me to anything, Isaac? When was the last time you called just to say hello?" "We're busy, Mom. We have lives, careers, responsibilities." "And I don't," I interrupted. My voice rose slightly. "I work 6 days a week. Pay rent. I manage a business. How is my responsibility any less than yours?" He hesitated. And then, without thinking, the words came out raw and sharp. "You're just ordinary, Mom. You clean people's houses. Dad's wife just bought a vacation place in Malibu. That's the world we live in now." And there it was, the truth I'd known but never wanted to hear. Ordinary. An embarrassment. Burden. I looked at my son, at the expensive suit, the carefully styled hair, the perfectly rehearsed life. And I didn't see my boy anymore. I saw a stranger. Something shifted inside me. It wasn't heartbreak. Not anymore. That had passed years ago. No, this was colder. Harder. The last thread of illusion snapping quietly. I said nothing. I just smiled, picked up my purse and walked out. Past Isaac. Past the guests. Past Henry and Natalie, who didn't even look up. No one stopped me. No one noticed. I walked out of that glass house like it was a stage I'd been dragged onto for a single line. On the sidewalk outside, I called a ride and waited, watching the glittering home glowing above the hills. All those lights. All that glass. All that emptiness. My phone buzzed. A message from Isaac. Asterisk, Mom, where did you go? Are you coming back? People are asking about you. Asterisk. Lie. I turned my phone off. Back in my little apartment in Glendale, I took off my shoes, poured a glass of wine, and sat on the balcony surrounded by my herb pots. The city lights were still beautiful from here. Less glamorous, more real. I thought about what Isaac said. Ordinary. Like it was a curse. Like working with your hands, living with simplicity made you less. As if the only value came from your job title or the square footage of your home. And that's when I knew. He didn't know anything. Neither of them did. They didn't know about the secret I'd kept for 15 years. About the files I never touched. About the number I'd memorized but never dialed. I turned my phone back on. 40 missed calls. Dozens of texts. None of them mattered. I made one call. The one I'd never expected to make. "Mr. Worthington," I said when the gruff voice answered. "It's Daisy Gainan. I think it's time we had that conversation." Then I hung up. And for the first time in years I felt ready. Mr. Worthington's office smelled like leather and wealth. I sat across from him, clutching my purse like armor, while he leaned back in a chair that probably cost more than everything in my apartment. Behind him, floor-to-ceiling windows framed Los Angeles like a glittering canvas. I'd cleaned penthouses with views like that, but I'd never once sat across from someone in an office like his, as an equal. "Mrs. Gainan," he said, folding his hands on his polished desk. "I have to admit I was surprised to get your call." "I was surprised to make it," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "But things change." Lawrence Worthington had once been Henry's business partner. They built Gainan Worthington Financial together back in the early years of my marriage. When the SEC began investigating Henry years ago, Lawrence took the fall. Henry walked away clean, with a fine, a few weeks of bad press, and his business intact. Lawrence lost his license, his career, and nearly everything he had. "I never forgot what your husband did," he said, reaching into a drawer and placing a thick folder between us. "He used me as his shield. But I rebuilt. And I waited. And when you found these," asked, tapping the folder, "I knew they were meant for you." Inside were years' worth of records, account numbers, transactions, shell companies. Henry had hidden more than $7 million offshore, all while claiming poverty during our divorce. That money should have been part of our settlement. Instead, I scrubbed toilets to keep a roof over our heads. "You're sure this can't be prosecuted?" "Yes. For tax fraud. Statute of limitations has passed. But hiding assets during divorce, that's a different story. Especially in California." I didn't open the folder again. I didn't need to. I'd been staring at the same truths for 15 years without knowing it. "What happens next?" "Yes. You filed to reopen the divorce case. Legally, that money is half yours. Possibly more, with penalties. And there's always the public angle." I nodded slowly. "I want both. What's legally mine, and the truth out in the open." He gave me a long, measured look. "That road's not easy, Daisy. He'll fight back." "I've been cleaning other people's messes for 15 years, I said quietly. "I'm not afraid of dirty work." My next stop was a cafe in Venice Beach. I waited alone, watching the door until a woman in a sharp pantsuit entered and sat across from me. Jessica Kwan, investigative reporter for the LA Times. She'd once looked into Henry years ago, but the story never ran. "I've wanted to meet you for a long time," she said, shaking my hand. I slid a copy of the folder across the table. "I think you'll find this interesting." She opened it, eyes scanning like a hawk. Her voice dropped. "This is real." "Yes. And it's time people knew." "How long have you had this?" she asked. "Just recently. I'd known something was wrong for years. But I didn't act. I was protecting my children." She looked up. "And now I'm protecting myself." She nodded. "This will take time. Weeks. Maybe longer. I'll need to verify everything. Trace the accounts, get quotes, talk to lawyers. Take the time you need. I've waited 15 years. As I stood to leave, she stopped me. "You understand this will affect your ex-husband's entire circle. His reputation. His family. Your children." "I'm counting on it," I said. And I meant it. That night I turned my phone back on. 47 missed calls. Over 60 texts. Most from Isaac and Matilda. One even said they were thinking of filing a missing persons report. I sent them both the same reply. *, I'm fine. I need time alone. Please respect that. *. Then I turned the phone off again. And slept, for the first time in years, without guilt, fear, or the weight of sacrifice pressing down on my chest. For 3 days I disappeared, just like they had so many times before. And on the 4th day, Matilda showed up at my door. She looked nothing like the polished, poised woman I usually saw on Instagram. Her hair was frizzy from the humidity, her eyes swollen, dark circles betraying nights without sleep. As soon as I opened the door, she rushed toward me, tears already pooling. "Mom," she gasped. "Where have you been? We've been worried sick." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in years. Matilda had always carried Henry's sharp features. His jaw, his calculating gaze, his silence when it mattered most. But now her expression was softer. Panic. Desperate. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "You disappeared," she said, pacing across my small living room as if it were a stage she'd never seen. "Isaac said you left the party without saying a word, and then you wouldn't answer any of our messages. What is going on?" I closed the door calmly and placed my purse on the table. "Something did happen to me," I said, voice cool and measured. "I finally opened my eyes." She frowned. "What are you talking about? Is this about Isaac?" "He told me what he said. He feels awful." "He didn't mean it." "Oh, he meant every word," I replied. "Just like you did. Many times in your own way." "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" "Yes. When was the last time you called to ask how I was doing? Not to cancel plans or explain why you were too busy. Just to check on me." Her mouth opened then closed. She couldn't answer. We both knew it. "I know I haven't been perfect," she said eventually, voice trembling. "But that doesn't mean we don't love you. Love without respect isn't love, Matilda. Duty. Obligation. And I'm done living off scraps." She sank onto the edge of my couch, suddenly small and shaken. "Why are you acting like this?" "Like what?" "Like someone with self-respect. Like someone who's finally tired of being the invisible woman who raised 2 children that now pretend she doesn't exist." "No one thinks that," she insisted. "Isaac does," I said. "And so do you." Her hands were shaking now. "What is this really about?" "It's about your father." She blinked. "Dad?" I nodded and walked over to the folder still sitting on my coffee table. "Your father committed fraud during our divorce. He hid over $7 million in offshore accounts. That money was mine too." Matilda stared at the folder but didn't reach for it. "That's not true. Dad wouldn't." "He did. And I've known for years." "You knew." Her voice broke. "And you didn't do anything." "I didn't do anything," I said evenly, "because I was trying to protect you. I didn't want to ruin your relationship with him. I didn't want to ruin your life. But I see now that my silence only gave you permission to disrespect me." She stood up, visibly shaking. "This will ruin everything. Do you understand what you're doing? If this comes out, Dad's career, Isaac's job, my marriage." "Yes," I said. "That's the point. You're punishing us for what Isaac said at a party." "No. I'm holding all of you accountable for 15 years of silence, dismissal, and shame." "You're bitter," she snapped. "You're ruining lives because yours didn't turn out the way you wanted." I stared her down. "No. I'm demanding what's mine. Your father stole my life and gave it to Natalie. And you both watched it happen. You benefited from it. And you acted like I was lucky to have been left with anything." Tears streamed down her face. "You'll regret this. When everything falls apart and we all hate you, you'll regret it." I walked to the door and opened it. "No, I won't." As she brushed past me, I added, "Tell your brother not to bother calling. My decision is made." When she was gone, I waited. I thought I might feel guilt or fear or even regret. But what I felt instead was free. My phone rang again. It was Isaac. I let it go to voicemail. His voice came through, tight and controlled. "Mom, what the hell is going on? Matilda's in pieces. What is this about Dad and offshore accounts? You've started something that's going to wreck all of us. Do you get that? Call me back. We need to talk." I deleted the message without listening to the rest. An hour later, my lawyer called. "Mrs. Gainan," he said, "we've filed the motion to reopen the divorce. Henry will be served tomorrow." Had begun. 15 years of silence. 15 years of shame. Now, the reckoning had started that night. I sat alone at my small dining table, an old photo album open in front of me. I turned each page slowly, looking at pictures of Isaac and Matilda when they were still mine. Genuinely mine. Their smiles were real back then. Their tiny hands reached for me, not away from me. There were birthday cakes I had baked from scratch, Halloween costumes I had sewn by hand, and school plays where I clapped the loudest. Had all of it been for nothing? Had every sacrifice been invisible, forgotten, unworthy? Maybe. But it didn't matter now. That chapter was closed. The following Sunday, the Los Angeles Times published Jessica Kwan's article. The headline sat like a thunderclap on the front page. Financial advisor accused of hiding millions during divorce. The secret Henry Gainan tried to bury. Right underneath was my name. Daisy Gainan. Not as a footnote, not as a sob story, but as a woman who stood up and spoke the truth. I read the article 3 times. Every word had weight. Jessica had been thorough. She linked the hidden offshore accounts to Henry's long trail of financial manipulation. She quoted former clients who suspected fraud but never had proof. She connected it to the old SEC investigation, the one that ruined Worthington's career but let Henry walk free. Jessica didn't hold back. She laid out every detail, the shell companies, the offshore movements, the forensic records. She even got a quote from Henry himself. Asterisk, these allegations are completely baseless. My ex-wife is a disturbed woman seeking revenge for imagined slights. Asterisk, imagined slights. 15 years of cleaning other people's houses. Of watching my children vanish into a world where I didn't fit. Of watching Natalie wear my life like a well-fitted coat. That wasn't imagined. That was real. My phone rang non-stop. Henry. Isaac. Matilda. Even Natalie. I let them all go to voicemail. At exactly 10 a.m. my lawyer called. I picked up on the first ring. Mrs. Gainan, I assume you've read the article. I have. Mr. Gainan's attorney reached out. They want to talk settlement. I smiled quietly to myself. Already. The story's been live for less than 4 hours. But several of his clients have already contacted his firm. They're nervous. His reputation is cracking. What are they offering? $3 million. Half the documented offshore funds. They claim the rest doesn't exist anymore. Not acceptable, I said flatly. I want half of everything. The money, the properties, the firm. There was a pause on the line. That's a very aggressive position. He stole 15 years of my life, I replied. I'm just asking for what's mine. I'll deliver your terms. Be prepared, this could take a while. I've waited long enough, I said. After hanging up, I checked my voicemails. Henry's was furious. You want a war, Daisy? Fine. But don't think I'll go down without taking you with me. I'll bury you in legal fees. You've got no idea who you're messing with. Delete. Isaac's voice was quieter, but colder. Mom, my boss called. They're reconsidering my position because of the press. Do you get what you've done? My career is on the line. Call me back. Delete. Matilda's was tearful. Jacob's parents saw the article. They want to postpone the baby shower. They don't want scandal in the family. Please, Mom. You've made your point. Can't we just stop? Delete. I stood up, put on the black dress I'd bought with a retainer from my lawyer. My first new dress in years, and waited. At noon there was a knock at the door. Henry. He looked exhausted, like the article had aged him overnight. His perfect suit was still tailored, but he couldn't hide the tightness in his jaw or the bags under his eyes. We need to talk, he said. Do we? I replied, not moving to let him in. What the hell do you think you're doing? You've ruined me. That article is full of lies. No, I said calmly. It's full of truth you spent 15 years hiding. You can't prove any of it. I already have. His eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. You won't go through with this. It's already in motion, Henry. The complaint is filed. The article is published. And the SEC might reopen their investigation with this new evidence. So no, this isn't a bluff. He pushed past me into the apartment. Let him. I wanted to see him squirm. He looked around with open disgust. This is what this is about. You're jealous. You've spent the last 15 years in this shoebox while I've built something real. You're bitter. Lone. And you want to drag everyone else down with you. I leaned against the wall. That's what you think. I know it. You've always been small-minded, Daisy. Always looking for reasons to feel wronged. No. I stayed quiet to protect the children. I stayed silent to protect you. But you don't get to rewrite the story now. You don't get to act like I didn't matter. He ran a hand through his hair. What do you want? A number. Fine. Name it. I'll buy your silence. Triple what Worthington's paying you. I laughed. He's not paying me anything. He gave me the truth. That's all I needed. You'll destroy everything, he said. Isaac's career, Matilda's reputation, the life I built. No, Henry. You destroyed those things when you decided to cheat your family out of what was rightfully theirs. You made these choices. Now you can live with them. This isn't over, he growled, turning for the door. You're right, I said. It's just beginning. And as he walked out, I felt it again, that lightness, that quiet power. I poured myself a glass of wine, stepped onto my small balcony, and watched the sun dip over the city. Somewhere out there, Henry was scrambling to salvage his empire. Isaac was wondering if he'd still have a job tomorrow. Matilda was explaining to her in-laws that her mother wasn't a villain, just a woman who'd been silent for far too long. But here, in this little apartment that once made me feel ashamed, I was at peace. I had stopped cleaning up everyone else's mess. Now I was dealing with my own. Justice was coming. Low, cold, and without mercy. Just as it should be. The headlines didn't fade the next day or the next week. If anything, the noise grew louder. News segments picked up the story. Financial blogs dug deeper. Former clients of Henry's began speaking out, anonymously at first, then publicly. Civil suits were hinted at. Reputations crumbled. And me. I stayed silent. For years, I had been the one who picked up the broken pieces while others pretended the glass had never shattered. I had been polite, quiet, willing to disappear to keep the peace. But peace had never existed in the first place. It had only been silence. The settlement negotiations dragged on for weeks. Henry's lawyers tried every tactic. Delay, deflect, discredit. But the documents were undeniable. So was the truth. When my lawyer called to say they were ready to meet our demands, I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry. I just nodded like it was the most natural thing in the world. 'Cause it was the final number. It wasn't just money. It was closure. It was dignity. It was a home that wasn't rented, a retirement that wasn't feared, a life that no longer had to be cleaned after someone else's. Isaac sent an email, short, formal. Asterisk. I hope this resolution brings you peace. We all made mistakes. I'm sorry for mine. Asterisk. I didn't respond. Matilda sent a letter, handwritten. Asterisk. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't know if I deserve it. But I want you to know I've been thinking about everything you said. About love and respect and what I chose to value. You were right. You were always right. I'm sorry, Mom. Asterisk. I read it twice. Then tucked it away in the same drawer where I'd once hidden overdue bills and eviction notices. One morning, I walked past the office building that used to belong to Henry's firm. His name had been removed from the sign out front. Someone else's brass letters were being installed. I stood and watched for a moment, then kept walking. At the farmer's market that weekend, I bought a bouquet of sunflowers. Not because anyone was coming over. Not for a holiday. Just because I wanted them. I passed two women gossiping near the herb stand. One of them looked vaguely familiar. A woman I'd cleaned for years ago. She glanced my way, then whispered something. Her friend turned and stared. I didn't look away. Smiled. Later that afternoon, a young woman at the library asked if I was that Daisy Gainan. Said yes. She smiled and said, "Your story, it meant something." I thanked her, checked out my books, and walked home under the soft light of a quiet city. I still lived in the same apartment. But everything was different now. Because this time I wasn't waiting. Not for love. Not for validation. Not even for forgiveness. This time I was living. And sometimes the most powerful revenge is not destroying others, but rebuilding yourself piece by piece, until you no longer resemble the woman they thought they could break. Justice had come. And with it freedom.